Well, thank you, Liz. And certainly, I never left. I'm still a member of Third Act Upstate New York, you betcha. And a special shout out to a few of the other Third Act working groups that are here. I'm going to be showing you here in a minute that Liz, certainly upstate New York is on the cutting edge, but you have a lot of company. We have now 13 working groups inside of Third Act that are entering or involved in the Solar Advocates Project. So I'd like to kind of get right to the point of why we are doing this. And it's to find a way where we as third actors can actually come in and have an effective role in certain make or break situations. Otherwise, if we're there, something might happen. And if we're not there, it might not happen. And why is that? Well, I argue that the number one threat we have today, beyond fascism, the number one threat that we have today is the next ton of greenhouse gases that goes into the atmosphere. We are hitting these climate tipping points. You know that. You read the same stuff I read. And what we have accomplished in the past 3 or 4 years is we've transitioned from renewable energy being the alternative to actually being where almost 98% of all new electrons coming onto the grid are coming from renewables. Now, that's something to celebrate, and we're going to through this project. But the reality is that our goal is to be at the 1990 levels as far as the saturation of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And we're not doing that. That we continue to build out fossil fuel infrastructure. And we have all these excuses that the industry and our politicians give us that we needed all of the above strategy because we're not at capacity here, there, or the otherwise. So, oh, yes, we need renewables, but we also need to have more fossil fuel, hence fossil fuel pipelines, new fossil fuel power generators. Oh, and we even need nukes. So our big threat is that we continue to put the same amount of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. We're not bringing it down to those 1990 levels. So we turn to the federal government. The doors are closed. We turn to the state government. I might as well talk to my shirt. And we ended up in a situation where what the heck are we going to do? Well, if you pay attention to what's going on, two of the major obstacles to the success story of the build out of renewable energy is permitting, that being in the case of community scale solar. We're talking about the permitting of land use, and same thing for utility scale. And then the other thing is this thing called the interconnection with the grid. Now, McKibben joked about this several months ago. Permitting and interconnection, two of the most boring words in the English language. I mean, how are we going to get a revolution around that? Well, here's where we come in. We need to take this and put it into terms that we realize are something that can be absorbed in the community. We need to really change the culture of our communities. So with the Third Act project, one of the first things we want to be doing is we want to get into our communities and talk. We just want to talk about how solar, wind, and battery are good for our community, the benefits that they bring to our community. And perhaps Corey and Lydia and others will talk a little bit more in a moment when a solar project comes in or a battery project come in. They don't just come in and build and pay taxes. They come in with these community benefit agreements, or what we often call host agreements. There are so many things that the community benefits from by having solar there. Can you imagine that we reach the point where we have our economic development people and our town board members and others out there advocating for developers, calling Lydia up and say, Lydia, do you have any solar developers that will come to our town and give us one of these projects with all those host agreements? They should be knocking on the door asking for solar to come into the community the same way they would ask for any other industry to come in and build a factory and give jobs. That's what we need to stimulate. It's not happening right now. It is. It's starting to happen. So that's where we go into the community and we talk to our friends and neighbors. You talk to the civic club. Rotary clubs are great for this. You talk to your creation care committee down at your UU church or wherever. You go into house parties that you have with your friends and neighbors, and you just talk about the benefits that come from having renewable energy coming in. Oh, and if you can talk about climate, do that. But I think you know how to deliver the message. Now, once we have the vocabulary, this knowledge of what to say, and the knowledge of what not to say, and we have the confidence through some practice to talk in these groups, we also now have the ability to show up where the not in my backyard people are. You'll learn about how there is an organized front. David Grubin knows it better than anybody, that's out there that's actually paid to spread misinformation and disinformation. You know, all that stuff I told you about solar being the most affordable, most reliable, most expeditious, who knows that better than we do? The fossil fuel industry. And they are determined to slow us down as much as they can. They know they can't stop us. They can slow us down so they can continue to extract their product and make money. And so there's organized fronts out there that are spreading this disinformation and misinformation. We need to know what they are saying, but we don't need to echo what they're saying. So we're knowledgeable about what they're saying. And then we say, you've heard from them. Now I'd like you to hear from me. And we start to talk. This often happens in New York State at your zoning board. So the planning board has this application for a solar field or a battery project. The planning board looks over all the scopes, but that land is zoned R2. It doesn't have zoning for a solar field or a battery storage field. Or even if it's an industrial park, it won't be zoned for battery because if it's not listed as an allowable, it's automatically a non-allowable. So they need to have what's called a variance. That comes from your zoning board. So the zoning board is sitting there going over all the reasons why they should grant them a variance so they could put the solar field or the battery project on that piece of property. And that's where NIMBY shows up. We need to make certain, and I know Lydia, you'll be talking about this, on how we can have a presence there to counter that. Not to argue about it, but to deliver the facts. And this is where Greenlight America comes in and Lydia comes in and all of our teams to get this done. Now, a little bit more, Liz, with all this is, okay, so we have a group of people that can go and talk in your local community. We have a group of people that can show up if needed at a zoning board. But also you have the expertise if we're dealing with the state agency. David Grubin, your project ended up in front of the Office of Renewable Energy Siting. And that required oral testimony and written testimony, either via Zoom or in person. And we can show up at that too and give those statements. And even one more, we're so good at this now that we can start talking to our local elected officials and our state officials, our assembly members, our senators in office, in district. Actually show up in Chautauqua and talk to the person right there about why we should be promoting solar projects into our community. So Liz, I'm just going to quickly share with you two things. One is in the chat, I just put where we're at. There are 13 working groups that have signed on to the project, and we just launched really about 2 months ago. And so you'll see here that Southern California, just yesterday, 5 people showed up in person at a place in Southern California to advocate for a battery energy storage system. Now, the planning board there had given a positive recommendation, but NIMBY was in big time. They're worried about fires in California, as you could understand. And so we had 5 third actors that went in there with the training from Greenlight America and gave testimony just last evening. Upstate New York, you guys have actually been doing it for a while in a few places. You can talk about that yourselves. But also Texas, Washington, and Wisconsin are right now, presently, advocating for projects in their community. And I see that Susan is here from Wisconsin. As far as started training, Connecticut is in their training cycle, and Michigan starts up on July 7th. And then scheduled to start training, we have Florida and New Jersey. And I got ahead of myself. Connecticut and Michigan are doing the training. Florida and New Jersey are queued. And then soon we'll be bringing in Colorado, Massachusetts, Maryland, and New Mexico. And one thing I'd like to share you before I say no more is on the share screen here, if you go to the Third Act website, right, and you come up here to this thing called Our Work, click, you'll see the current campaigns. One of these is not up to date. And right here is the Solar Advocates Project. So if you ever want to, again, get a little bit of a review and get some resources in addition to what you're going to get from Third Act Upstate New York, you can click here on Learn More. And you see here we have resources and blogs. So if you scroll down, you'll see the resources and the blogs. So Liz, I'm very proud of Third Act Upstate New York for getting in on this because, again, folks, the biggest threat is that next ton of greenhouse gases. What can we do about it? This is what we can do about it. We need to get as much renewable energy out there to drive those carbon electrons plain out of business and turn that curve down to where the boutique fuel is fossil fuel. So thank you.